Hi there, thanks for stopping by. Today's video is a little bit of a request showing you how to do a ring in ring Dorset button. So I will be showing you two different methods. This isn't the be all and end all of ways that you can do it, but it should help you see what can be done. So let's get started. For method 1, I'm working with 2 brass rings and some number 8 pearl cotton. I'm using a variegated shade, so hopefully it won't be too confusing for you. I'm going to cover each of these rings using the usual Dorset button method, so a blanket stitch around the edge of the rings, and I'm going to slick the edge. And so now I have 2 covered rings. If you have never made a Dorset button before, I will pop a link in the description box below to my video on how to make a Dorset button. I have trimmed the excess off of the large, but I have kept the excess on the small one. That's just going to sort of ease things up a little bit. I have, for this method, as you can see, I have used the same color thread. That's basically just so that it doesn't get too confusing in the overall look. And this is a look of its own. So take the thread through to the back. Basically, the first thing that you want to do, you want to decide where you're putting your second ring on the inside, and then wrap. So you're going to wrap around both of the rings to join the 2 sections. Now, if you want to leave a gap in between these 2 sections, you can of course do so. You can gauge the gap in any number of ways. One of the easiest is probably to put a pin or a needle through between the 2 spaces. But I would advise you, for the first instance, to try just connecting one inside of the other. And yes, because I'm using a graduated thread, this wrapping is covering up that graduated tone on the rings, but that's okay. Because it's graduated, you're not really going to know. And just get it so that you're happy that it's not moving away too much. It will still move because we haven't done the rest of the securing. And then at the back, I'm just going to thread that through. Okay? And so I'm going to wrap in the same way as you would any Dorset button, but I've got to remember the hole, okay? So it's a good idea to just take your thread through the ridges at the back on the larger of the 2 so that you can get in position to do a spoke. And then basically you will just wrap through to make a spoke. Now obviously getting these lined up is going to be a little bit more difficult than if you're working with a single hole. You've got to actually think about your tension, you've got to think about your placement. And you have to remember that at the center hole, your spokes are going to be closer and they're going to be farther away on the outer ring, okay? Just because it's a larger ring. Just try to make sure that your spokes are as straight as you can make them. And then secure that again at the back through the ridges, just to make sure that all stays put. And then you can begin your wrapping. Just with any other Dorset button, you want to work rounding back stitches if you want the rib at the top, and you want to work reverse rounding back stitches if you want it to be quite a smooth finish. I'm going to work the traditional rounding back stitch. At this point, I'm going to change from the sharp needle to a tapestry needle because it just makes it a little bit easier and you don't have to worry about catching your threads. And again, if you don't know how to work the rounding back stitches, then do pop over to that video below and you will see how to work them. Now try when you've got threads that are underneath a slightly different angle, try to do your stitches so that you bring them together, okay? And as I say, it doesn't really matter how you work on this because you're not going to be working all of the way round, but I do advise you to work from the inside hole, the inside ring, out to the outer ring. So with the stitching, you're going to go back and forth. Now there is a really nice way to make this a neat finish when you go back and forth, and I will show you when I've worked enough to get here where it's a little bit more open, because down here you're just not going to be able to see it. So I will carry on working for a little while and then come back and show that part. So what I do when I'm changing direction and I don't want to have like a float, something that's slightly off the line coming back, is that what I'll do is I'll come up around a spoke, and I'm going to do this here. And then because you have two layers to your spoke, you have the top and you have the bottom that's gone around the back. When you work around, if you then split and go in between so that you are inside of the bottom one, at the top it looks like you've fully covered the ridge. But of course you haven't covered the bottom. And then you can come along and work as normal when you're changing direction. And what that does is it means that you have that sort of depression alongside each of the spokes that doesn't get lost because you're changing direction. So I'll show you again on this side. So I'm coming up, and as I go around, instead of going around both, I will split and go in the middle of both, giving me my ridge, and then I can come back up to the next one, and you don't really see at the front that the direction's been changed. And then when you've filled as much as you can either go down to a section, or you can thread through, or the easiest way to fasten off is to just catch the ridge and give yourself a little knot. Now, if you're going to knot on a ridge at any point, inside or outside, it's a really, really good idea to then take your thread and thread it through elsewhere, because if you cut that tail right there, it'll pop up and you'll see it at the front. Whereas if you thread it through before you cut it, now be careful not to thread it through to the front, and then you trim it, you won't see it then. So that's one method to have a hole within your Dorset button. You can hang it like that as a pendant. And you can of course get some quite cool effects depending on the threads that you use. For the second method, again, I'm using 2 different rings. I will also link in the description box below the materials from my website that I've used. We do have a huge amount of button molds, including lots and lots of different rings, so plenty to be trying and experimenting with. Two rings, and now I'm going to put one inside of the other. I've decided that I'm going to have my connecting color be the color of the outer. It doesn't matter which you choose, you just have to change how you do it slightly. So I'm going to turn it upside down. I'm going to turn the inner ring upside down. Make sure the ridges are to the back. I'm going to take a pin, decide where I want to place this, and pin it, if possible, through the ridges and right the way across. So obviously if your ring is far too large and you can't fit pins to go across, you may need to work some holding stitches. So similar to method 1, but in a different color so that you're just holding everything in place. Now I like to place a few because at the moment, if I do just that, that will slide as I'm pulling on it. So the more pins that you can get that are crossing over, and of course they won't cross over properly because you haven't got enough space and they're not bending, but you can see what I mean, that so long as you hold as many sides as you can, so that's not really going to go anywhere now. Now I'm going to use a sharp needle and I'm going to work from the edge through the ridge on the inside ring, taking care that just take your time, because what's going to happen is, of course, you're going to get caught on the pins if you're not very careful. Now I quite like to come up and around the outer ring. I just find that that helps me to sort of balance things out a little bit. And then I can come back to the center ring, under the ridges, a couple of times, if need be, to get to the next place, okay? So you have to make sure that it doesn't show on the front. And then I'm coming up again, around. I don't want to pull too tightly because I don't want the ridge to come out to the side if I can help it. You see it's come out to the side a little bit there, and it's really, to my liking, I prefer it not to. Okay. Slide that pin out of my way a little bit. Work back through, and because I want to make sure that that ridge stays in place, by working some of this wrapped, I should be able to manage quite well. You can flip it back and forth as much as you need to, but I do tend to find that often working from the back will give you a good indication that everything's sort of working and is in place where it needs to be. If your central ring ridge shows, as this does in places, you need to pull it back. Now this isn't as easy as it implies. You've got to sort of stitch into the color and pull it down towards the center. You can see that's pulled it down. And so it's a little like whip stitch at the spoke. To pull that background in. As you'll find it difficult even with nails to try to push it in with your nails. And if you think that this is sort of going to show at all, you can also go ahead and do this with the inner ring color. So there's my ring. You can see a little bit of the blue where I've pulled it in. You see that's the back. So depending on what I want to achieve, because I could go ahead and put another filling in the center, but I'm not going to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work some wrapping stitches just to make sure everything is neat and tidy through the center. Now if you had worked the opposite way and connected underneath the ridge of the outer one, then it's the opposite way round of what you might be seeing. So I'm not going to actually work a blanket stitch because I don't want to create another ridge that I have another problem with. Okay, so I'm just going to fasten this with a little bit of a tail. And then I'm going to wrap around the center ring in the same color. And I'm doing this before I do anything with the filling. When I fasten this off, I'm going to fasten it off closer to the darker color because I'm going to be wrapping that. And so now you have a nice clean finish on the inside edge. Now I'm just going to work a reverse rounding back stitch around this. You could of course work the ordinary rounding back stitch. I thought as I did that on the first button, I'll do something different on this one. And so a neat little button with a hole in the middle. There we have two different methods to attach a ring inside of a ring. Please remember that this is not a traditional technique, and so therefore there really are no rules. If you find that some other method works for you, go for it. You may find washi tape helps. You may find that you want to weave in and out when you connect. Something like this from my 2016 challenge, you can see I've worked them, I've connected, but I've also layered. So there's a lot of different things playing around there. And on this one, again from my 2016 challenge, I actually connected them through the ridges, but then I wove back and forth so that I have a completely solid button at the bottom here. There's nothing showing through, but there is at the top. So you've got a lot of possibilities there. Just play around and have fun. And so, if you like the video, do please click like, hit subscribe, all that fun stuff. Click the notification bell. It all helps the channel. And of course, you'll be told then when I upload the next video. And until the next time, take care of yourselves. Bye-bye for now.